Lila Marlowe stood on the platform of Eldenwood Station, watching the last wisp of steam curl away from the old train. The familiar scent of damp earth and pine filled the air, bringing back a flood of memories she had long tried to bury. It had been 12 years since she left the village behind, yet now that she was here, everything felt both the same and utterly changed. The village of Eldenwood had a way of holding on to the past. Its narrow streets were lined with stone cottages covered in ivy, and the towering trees whispered secrets on the breeze. Lila pulled her coat tighter around her as she made her way toward the ancient manor that had once been her childhood home. Samuel Marlowe, her father, had been a respected historian, a man whose life was dedicated to uncovering the stories hidden in old books and crumbling ruins. But now, his own story was coming to an end. His sudden death had sent ripples through the family, and the promise of a will reading had drawn Lila back into the web of her past. As she approached Eldenwood Hall, the massive oak doors seemed to loom like silent sentinels guarding forgotten truths. The stone walls were weathered and thick with moss, and the windows reflected the gray sky like watchful eyes. Lila's footsteps echoed in the empty driveway, stirring a chill that had little to do with the cold spring air. Inside, the house smelled of dust and aged wood. Faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow her every move. Lila felt the weight of 1,000 untold stories pressing down on her chest. She hadn't expected to feel so unsettled. She had left Eldenwood to escape the silence that had settled between her and her father, but now she was forced to confront it once more. Relatives gathered in the grand drawing room, their polite smiles barely masking the tension simmering beneath. Some glanced at Lila with curiosity, others with thinly veiled resentment. Years of unresolved disputes had created invisible walls that seemed to separate them all. Ethan, her 11-year-old son, stayed close by her side. His wide eyes darted nervously around the room, absorbing the unfamiliar faces and hushed whispers. Lila could feel his unease as if it were her own. The solicitor, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat and began the reading. His voice was low and steady, but the words felt heavy, as though the pages themselves were reluctant to give up their secrets. Samuel's will spoke of property and possessions, but then something unusual happened. The solicitor hesitated, his finger tracing the delicate script on an old parchment. He read aloud a cryptic message, an invitation to uncover a mystery hidden in Samuel's last work. A shiver ran down Lila's spine. She exchanged a glance with Ethan, who gripped her hand tightly. The house suddenly felt colder, as if a presence unseen was listening, waiting. That night, as the manor settled into darkness, Ethan awoke to faint murmurs floating through his room. Shadows danced on the walls, flickering like candle flames. He whispered his father's name, and for a fleeting moment, the air grew still. When Lila came to check on him, Ethan was wide-eyed and trembling. He told her of the whispers, the shadows, and a voice that seemed to call him. She comforted him, insisting it was just a dream. Yet, deep inside, she wondered if something from the past was trying to reach them. As the night deepened, Lila lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The mystery of Eldenwood was no longer just her father's secret. It was theirs to solve, a puzzle wrapped in silence and shadow, waiting to be uncovered. The morning light struggled to pierce the thick gray clouds hanging over Eldenwood. Lila sat at the large oak dining table, the ancient parchment still spread before her. The words from her father's final message repeated in her mind like a haunting refrain. Samuel Marlowe had left more than just property. Buried within his last historical manuscript was a secret coded in music, a melody meant to unlock truths long buried beneath the surface of their family history. Lila's fingers trembled as she traced the notes carefully written in the margins of the dusty book. The melody was incomplete, a fragment that seemed to reach out to her, whispering across time. She could almost hear the faint strains of a piano echoing through the halls, a song that her father never finished. Ethan sat beside her, eyes bright but shadowed with questions he could not voice. He had not spoken much since last night, but Lila noticed how he kept glancing toward the old piano in the corner of the room, as if drawn by an invisible force. Curiosity mingled with unease as she prepared to explore the manor's dusty library. The house held countless secrets, and her father's obsession with the past had left clues scattered in every corner. The deeper she delved, the more she felt watched, by portraits, by shadows, by memories that refused to stay buried. Later, as Lila leafed through Samuel's journals, she found entries describing a mysterious music box hidden somewhere in Eldenwood Hall. It was said to hold a recording of the lost melody, a final piece her father had treasured. Determined, Lila called Ethan to follow her through the maze of rooms. The old house creaked and groaned with every step. In the dim light, they found a locked cabinet behind a tapestry, its key missing. Ethan reached out, and suddenly the air shifted. A faint whisper brushed past his ear, almost like a voice calling his name. He froze, then pointed to a loose floorboard nearby. With trembling hands, Lila lifted the board, revealing a small, ornately carved music box. Dust coated its surface, but when Ethan opened it, the first few notes of the lost melody played softly, filling the room with a bittersweet resonance. The music seemed to unlock something deep within the manor, stirring the air and shadows as if the house itself was breathing. Lila looked at Ethan, whose eyes shone with wonder and fear. The mystery was unfolding faster than she had imagined, and the echoes of the past were reaching out to them in ways they could not yet understand. As dusk settled over Eldenwood, a heavy silence wrapped the manor in its embrace. Lila and Ethan sat by the fire, the music box resting between them, its melody still echoing faintly in their ears. But the calm was deceptive. Outside, the wind whispered through the gnarled branches of the ancient trees, carrying with it a chill that seemed to seep into the very walls. Shadows flickered in the corners of the rooms, as if the house was alive with memories longing to be heard. Lila's thoughts wandered back to the night of her father's funeral, when tensions had flared and old wounds reopened. Her brother Marcus had been cold, distant, and guarded, a stark contrast to the warmth she remembered from childhood. She remembered how Marcus had warned her not to dig too deep into their father's secrets. "Some things are better left alone," he had said, voice low and harsh. But Lila's curiosity burned too fiercely to heed the warning. Oliver, her son, had been unusually quiet since their arrival. The boy's eyes held a depth that unsettled her, as if he could see beyond the veil that separated past from present. That night, as the clock struck midnight, Oliver awoke, calling softly for his grandfather. Lila found him standing at the window, staring out into the darkness with wide, fearful eyes. "I heard him, Mum," Oliver whispered. "He wants us to find the truth. To finish what he started." The word sent a shiver down Lila's spine. She realized then that the mystery was no longer just about history or inheritance. It was about healing, about confronting the shadows that had haunted their family for decades. Together, they decided to explore the manor's hidden rooms, places Samuel had once sealed away. Each step deeper into the past brought new revelations and new dangers. In the dim light of the library, Lila discovered a hidden door behind a bookshelf. The lock was old but not unbreakable. With Ethan's help, she managed to open it, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. The air grew colder as they descended, the walls lined with faded photographs and cryptic notes. Somewhere in the depths lay the final piece of the puzzle, a piece that might explain why Samuel Marlowe had been so desperate to keep his secrets hidden. Lila's heart pounded. The truth awaited them, but so did the risk of losing everything they thought they knew. The staircase spiraled down into the cold silence beneath Eldenwood Hall. Lila held a flickering candle, its trembling light casting eerie shadows on the stone walls. Ethan followed close behind, his footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust that had settled over decades. Oliver walked between them, his small figure resolute despite the chill that seemed to settle in his bones. He clutched a worn notebook, a gift from his grandfather, filled with scribbled melodies and cryptic drawings. The air grew heavier with each step, charged with an energy that Lila could neither explain nor ignore. As they reached the bottom, they found themselves in a narrow cellar lined with crates and forgotten relics. In the center of the room stood an old phonograph, its horn cracked but intact. Beside it lay a collection of wax cylinders, fragile and yellowed with age. Lila gently lifted one and placed it on the player. As the needle touched the surface, a haunting melody began to fill the room. The very same tune from the music box, but longer, richer, layered with voices singing in a language she did not recognize. Suddenly, the temperature dropped further. A whisper drifted through the cellar, almost like a sigh of relief. Oliver's eyes widened as he pointed to a faded photograph on the wall, a picture of his great-grandfather standing beside Samuel Marlowe, both smiling but with eyes that held secrets. The realization struck Lila hard. The mystery was not just about her father's life. It was a story spanning generations, entwined with family legacies and perhaps something supernatural. As the last notes faded, the room seemed to breathe, and for a fleeting moment, Lila thought she saw a shadowy figure at the edge of the light, a man in a coat, holding a baton, watching them with an intensity that chilled her to the bone. The music had opened a door not only to the past but to something far beyond, something waiting patiently to be understood. Back in the manor's grand sitting room, the flickering candlelight barely chased away the growing shadows. Lila placed the wax cylinder carefully on the side table, her mind racing with questions. The haunting melody and the shadowy figure had left her unsettled, but there was no time to dwell. She sat down with Oliver and Ethan, spreading out the old notebooks and letters Samuel had left behind. Among the faded pages, Lila found a half-composed symphony, the notes blurred and incomplete. The music seemed to pulse with a hidden urgency, as if it held a message meant only for those who dared to listen. Lila traced her fingers over the ink, noticing strange symbols that did not belong to any musical notation she had ever seen. Oliver suddenly tugged her sleeve. "Mum, look at this," he said softly, pointing to a page filled with scribbled words and a drawing of a key. The key was unlike any she had seen, ornate, twisted, and etched with symbols matching those in the music. It felt like a clue, a tangible piece of the mystery Samuel had left behind. That night, Lila dreamt of her father. He stood in a vast concert hall, the audience silent and expectant. He raised his baton, but his eyes held a desperate plea. "Finish it," he whispered, voice echoing through the emptiness. "The truth is in the music." Awakening with a start, Lila realized the weight of her task. The symphony was more than just a composition. It was a map to secrets long buried, and a call for reconciliation that could heal the fractured bonds of their family. Yet as she shared her discoveries with Marcus, his face hardened. "You're meddling in things best left alone," he warned. "This symphony brought nothing but pain to Father, and it will do the same to you." Lila's resolve only strengthened. With Oliver's unique gift and Ethan's unwavering support, she vowed to uncover the full truth, no matter the cost. Days passed, but sleep eluded Lila. The mystery of the symphony haunted her waking hours as much as her dreams. Oliver's strange experiences grew more intense, and Ethan remained a steady anchor amid the growing tension. One evening, as the autumn wind howled outside, Oliver led Lila and Ethan to the attic of Eldenwood Hall. He claimed the answers lay where the shadows gathered longest. The attic was cluttered with relics and dust-covered furniture, yet something felt different, alive, waiting. Among the forgotten boxes, they found an old journal belonging to Henry Whitmore's father, Edwin. The journal's pages revealed a story of a forbidden love and a secret pact made long ago, linking the Whitmore family to an ancient guardian spirit bound to the music. The symphony was not just a piece of art. It was a ritual, a key to releasing the spirit trapped between worlds. Oliver's eyes sparkled with understanding as he whispered, "It's why I hear him. Why he's trying to reach us." Suddenly, a chill swept through the attic. The candle flickered violently, and the faint outline of a man appeared near the window. His gaze was heavy with sorrow, but his presence brought no fear, only a profound sense of urgency. Lila felt the weight of generations pressing down on her shoulders. The shadows of the past were no longer distant. They were here, demanding to be acknowledged and reconciled before it was too late. The days grew colder as autumn deepened, but inside Eldenwood Hall, the atmosphere was charged with a restless energy. Lila worked tirelessly alongside Ethan and Oliver, piecing together the fragments of the unfinished symphony and the hidden messages woven through its notes. Each revelation brought them closer to a truth that had long been buried in silence, a truth that could either mend the fractures within their family or shatter them irreparably. Oliver's connection to the spirit grew stronger. At night, he spoke in a voice not quite his own, sharing fragments of a melody that seemed to unlock memories from beyond. One evening, as the full moon cast silver light through the stained glass windows, Lila found herself standing before a dusty grand piano in the manor's music room. The unfinished symphony rested on the music stand, waiting. With trembling hands, she began to play, guided by Oliver's whispered notes and the visions that danced at the edges of her mind. The music swelled and soared, weaving through sorrow, hope, and forgiveness. As the final note lingered in the air, a warm light filled the room, and a gentle presence enveloped them all. In that moment, the past and present converged. The spirit of Henry Whitmore smiled, finally at peace, as the family found healing in the truth that Oliver had spoken, a truth carried in the music that bound them together. The dawn broke softly over Eldenwood Hall, casting golden light across the ancient walls that had witnessed generations of secrets. The weight of the past had lifted, replaced by a fragile peace that felt like the beginning of something new. Lila stood by the window, watching Oliver play the piano. His small fingers danced over the keys with a confidence born not just of talent, but of a deep connection to the music that had bound their family's history. Marcus watched from the doorway, his expression softened by understanding. The bitterness that once divided them now seemed distant, replaced by a tentative hope. Oliver stopped playing and looked up at his mother. "I think he wanted us to listen," he said quietly. Lila smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Yes, Oliver. He wanted us to listen, and to forgive." The mystery of the symphony was solved, but more importantly, the fractured family had begun to heal. The music that once echoed with sorrow now sang of reconciliation and love. As the sun climbed higher, Eldenwood Hall felt alive again, a place where past and present danced together, and where the truth spoken by a young boy had changed everything forever.